Welcome back, Jaguars. My name is Holly Anderson, and I'm the Activities Director here at Northview Middle School. We are going to be handling things a little bit differently this year, and we're going to do a video recording on Zoom of our parent meeting that we used to meet in person, and we're just going to do this remotely and distribute to coaches. So hopefully you'll get some helpful information. I do have Mr. Pete Harder here as well to share some athletic training information about student safety, student health. We'll cover some COVID guidelines. But a bulk of the information and the more detailed information will be shared by your coaches. We're super excited to have kids back and doing the things they love, but we all have to understand that we have to be patient, take things in stride, and know that things could change daily. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. First of all, I would like for you to know all the activities that we offer to 8th grade students, their head varsity coach and their 8th grade coach. Girls cross country, Eric Cogdill is the head varsity coach, Kyle Bennett, 8th grade head. Boys cross country, Chad Fickbaum is the varsity coach, and then Mike Radu here in our building is the 8th grade head. Volleyball, Jessica Reinhardt is the head coach. Amy Miller, who is a teacher at the elementary level in our district, and she's the 8th head. Football, Ryan and Jerry Pizzetti, head varsity, and Andy Fain, who is a teacher at Prairie Ridge, is our 8th head coach. So anyway, they've all been doing a fantastic job of getting information at a fast pace and trying to figure out what it means for their specific sport and how to communicate that out. So once again, we appreciate all those coaches and all you parents being cooperative with the communication piece. Here's the staff that works for Ankeny, Centennial, and Northview activities offices. Randy Hoyk, Marge Rasmussen, and Scott Jarvis are housed at Centennial, so they oversee most of the 10th through 12th. Marge does a lot with camps, and myself, Holly Anderson, and Dawn Huckmeyer oversee things at Northview. Dawn does a lot with rostering. She's also a front desk receptionist. So those are some faces that might become real familiar for you, and we'll be able to help you with any questions you do have. I'm going to start with just a few Northview topics that I think are the most important in terms of what we're facing this year with the COVID restrictions and it being a new experience for a lot of these families. So I'm just going to start through the bullets here. Typically for 8th grade, games are at 4:30. There are some events such as cross country that may start as early as 4, but just be aware that it is usually an earlier time for middle school events. Practices typically are after school. Every once in a while we have to slide a few in the morning to spread out so we don't have as many kids in those high participation sports. So just be sure you're in constant communication with your student. The coaches will do a good job at including you on most of the communication, but we do try to start grooming those kids to be more responsible for their own schedules and communication with their families as well. So it's a good habit to get into, to check with them every day at least to see what's going on. There are going to be schedule changes. I just had another one today because there's schools that are doing different things with their academic schedule, which is going to roll out to some implications for the activity schedule. So just be sure that you understand that in advance and be ready to roll with the punches, because we're all going to have to be like that this year. Locker room use and building entry, there are going to be some changes this year. Locker room use is going to be very limited. It's going to look a little bit different for each sport, volleyball, cross country, and football. If your student is not in school on a specific day that they're coming to their activity, they will not be using the locker room at all. For cross country and volleyball, they're just using it to change quickly after school. There's nothing stored in the locker room. Football is going to be able to store helmets and football pads during the school day, but everything has to be taken home each night and disinfected and cleaned. So coaches will be following up with more details on that, but just know that there's no overnight storage in our locker rooms, and that's due to state code. Busing and transportation, there is a waiver that coaches either have sent out or they're going to be sending out, and everyone needs to complete that. It's basically saying yes to the bus, which is 2 to a seat with a face covering. So masks are required per transportation guidelines. Coaches will cover more of that as well. You can take your student actually after games, especially we would encourage it before or after. Transportation will be an ongoing struggle, I think, just with the number of buses we need. and the number of restricted seating availability we have. So just be flexible with that. And if you can transport your child, we're so okay with that this year. And anyway, cover those details later. Game day and practice day structures may change just as we get started. We have a plan for the start, but just be prepared for a change there. A big question has been with the hybrid schedule, if students are not in school on a day, if they come to practice or if they can come to practice. Yes, they may, but we understand that there's going to be challenges to get kids there because there is no transportation for those kids to get to activities since it is an option to participate in those. So we would love to have you there, but if it doesn't work out, we completely understand and it won't be held against your child. So spectator limitations, there's going to be more information. The high schools are starting to set more clear expectations around that, and then things kind of run through us. So be prepared for more information regarding spectators. Communication, I already said that. Make sure that you're encouraging responsibility and good communication with your child at home. There will be a few volunteer needs, and that's kind of sport specific. So the coaches will communicate to you when that need is there. Real important, there's a Varsity Bound app that many of you are already completing, or your child's already completing the questionnaire before they come to their Winning Edge or their camp. That's going to continue on into the school year. So the coaches all have a specific link that has an invitation for the child, your child or your athlete to complete, and they have to have that done before they can enter practice. If they don't have the possibility or the ability to do that on their phone, then we will have paper copies and we will take a temperature screening of them before they practice. Jaguar online registration. This information has come out to families, mass communication 2 times since early July. Your child has to be registered online before they're allowed to start practicing. This houses all types of waivers. It also houses their sports physical, which per state code you have to have completed in order to participate. So there's the link. You can find it on our website. If you dig back into your emails, you'll be able to find that information. And there's videos that help you through the steps of completing the online registration. Role of parents in sports. I'm just going to quickly go through this. It's all things that we know, but it's always a nice reminder, especially at the 8th grade level. We're asking kids sometimes to try things they've never tried before because now's the time to do that. So if we're just positive and encourage them, be a role model and try not to always be the critic, you know, even if you have some things that you want to work on, lead with a positive. You know, demonstrating just poise and confidence even when you're at an event is great for kids to see because they do mimic the actions that they see their parents doing. So we also, it's like school ball, so all of a sudden, or school activities, parents aren't the coaches anymore in most cases. So that's hard to step away for parents. I know personally how hard that is, and to trust the coaches to make the decision that's right. So we've got great people that are committed to kids and committed to creating a great experience. So anyway, just keep that in mind. Encourage the multi-sport participation, even though it's hard on the schedule. Be a good listener. Help them, you know, have attainable goals and roles. Look at the opponents as guests, you know, treat them as guests. And accept, you know, the judgment of officials and coaches for sure, because you know, you might disagree with the decision they've made, but it's really not something that you should be challenging. Demonstrate winning with integrity and losing with dignity, and skipping down to the end again, just be an encourager to make it a positive experience for these kids. Social media, there's all kinds of information on social media. Mr. Jarvis is fantastic. I'll put some things on the Ankeny Northview, Jaguars AD. Those are both Twitter sites that are great. He duplicates a lot on Facebook and Instagram. We also have a website that's new this year, so it will house some of our information too. So information overload there. The CIML website is where our schedules are housed. The link at the top, the www.cimlcentral.org, you can set yourself up to get notifications through your computer. And then you can, when you put your phone number in, it'll send you like a reminder, a notification every time a change is made. And it almost allows you to see it as soon as we make that change as administrators. There's also a little blue baseball cap icon I added to this slide. That's an app that you can get on your phone that I think is life-changing. And it's basically the same thing, just a mobile version of it. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions regarding that, but I would strongly encourage you do that, because with all the changes that we're going to be facing, it'll be a nice resource. Just a few things in terms of information that's in the student handbook. Academic policy, 8th grade is a little bit different than the high school policies. 8th grade, we both operate on a no pass, no play. So after first semester, if a student in 8th grade fails, of course, they will be out for the next sport they choose to participate for 15 days. And if that is something that impacts your child, you'll get a letter at home and stuff that'll have more specifics. We expect students to be in school typically in a regular academic year. This year's a little bit unusual because we know kids won't be here every day, but typically they have to be there all day. So if they go home for whatever reason or miss any class periods on the days they are here, they can't attend the activity practice. If you're not well enough to be in school, then you really shouldn't be coming to practice on those school days. Good conduct policy is basically about the behavior conduct of your students. The first offense in 8th grade is a 2-week suspension from their extracurriculars, and a second offense is no extracurricular activities for the remainder of the year. These are big things: fighting, alcohol, drug use, tobacco, social media bullying. But anyway, those are all things that are pretty extreme. I don't deal with a ton of these, and especially with those kids that are representing our school, excuse me, in athletics and activities. Participation truly isn't a privilege and not a right. Sportsmanship is so important, and this is the foundational level of all of our programs, so it's so important that as they continue to build on this Jaguar creed, that they understand that we're going to handle ourselves respectfully, and we're going to conduct ourselves in a manner that represents our school well. Parent and coach communication guide. Basically on this one, just if you do have a concern, just know that inappropriate topics of conversation, like coaches aren't going to talk playing time. They're not going to talk about team strategy or any kind of play calling, or like, I really believe my child is this position, but you have them in this position. When we turn over our children to school coaches, it's their responsibility to make those decisions and not parents. Also, we're not ever going to talk about other student athletes, but we will talk about what your child can do to contribute and improve. We do want to know if you have any serious concerns about changes in your students' behavior or health. Those are all things that we need to know because we do work so directly with them. When your child does have equipment and stuff that belongs to the school district, they are accountable and responsible for that. And if they do lose it or do not return it to the school, there will be a fee assessed. Strength and conditioning. Many of you took place in Winning Edge this summer, or your students did, and we got through that season. It was a great program for kids. Our coaches worked really hard at having a model that worked with all the COVID restrictions. So proud of them for that. But it does help with injury prevention, all that athletic performance stuff, self-esteem, reduce risk of injury, lessen the recovery time, all those things. And I think Pete, our athletic trainer, will talk more about that. But we really encourage the strength and conditioning, and we'll have hours after school open for those kids that aren't in season. And some in-season coaches may use that weight room facility to involve that in their practices from time to time. So don't be surprised if that happens. Now we're going into the COVID, my favorite new word, COVID-19 guidance. This is a doc that's all over our Twitter, just some reminders in general with Ankeny Community School District and the return to play guidelines. If you're not feeling well, you need to stay home, contact your coach. Complete your pre-screen prior to attending any practice. I already talked about that. That's that app. We will, to the best of our ability, practice social distancing. All students need to bring their own water, their own hand sanitizer and face covering, and all three of those things are a requirement. Wash your hands and sanitize frequently. Communicate any pre-existing health conditions. Stay home if you've been in contact with anyone with COVID-19, like a positive test, and contact your coach. Facilities will be cleaned and disinfected daily. And face coverings will be used in situational times to assure student safety. So that kind of depends on the sport your child is participating in. One thing to remember is participation activities is optional. So if you have a lot of anxiety about all of this, I'm happy to talk with you about it, but just remember that there's no judgment passed if you just choose not to forgo activities this year. We understand that. Already talked about the Varsity Bound app. If a student has not completed the pre-screen app, they will be required to complete the paper form that coaches will have and have a temperature screen taken. Can't enforce enough, bring your own water because we're not allowed to have like the public fill stations per state rule. Students need to bring their own face covering and hand sanitizer. And I'm going to turn it over to athletic trainer, Mr. Pete Harder.
Thanks, Holly. I'm going to take this off here just so I can talk a little bit easier for you guys. So I just wanted to touch base on a couple of things that have to help mitigate some of the COVID responses, and also some things that we can still offer you at the school here for everything else for athletic training wise and health concerns. The biggest thing is if your athlete doesn't feel well, make sure they stay home. Fill out the Varsity Bound app, but also send a coach a text saying, hey, I'm not feeling well today. I'm going to stay home. We have to coordinate that with our nursing staff. Wendy here, she does a great job taking care of all those guidelines and everything else. And we have to contact Polk County Health Department and use their protocol that they have in place to get them back into participation. Biggest things you can do is mitigate risk. So try to reduce your outside exposures. The coaches and the staff here do a great job of trying to keep everything separated as best as they can, but reducing your outside exposures on the weekends or the nights off is going to help mitigate some of the risk factors and help keep the rest of the team safe and healthy as well. Just some general guidelines: avoiding your face when you're as much as possible. There's no spitting or anything allowed during practices. Disinfect and wash your equipment as soon as practice is done. As soon as they get home, I highly recommend disinfecting everything that you have. If they have their clothes, change their clothes, make sure they get clean clothes on, and disinfecting their gear and everything they have with them, and then taking a shower immediately, just so if you did get exposed to something, then you'll reduce the cross-contamination factors. No sharing of personal items is going to be allowed. And talked about face covering. Bring those with you at every practice and make sure you keep those clean as well. Do not share equipment. If you have, if you do get exposed, if somebody at your household comes back with gets sick and has a positive test, we want that athlete, even if they don't have symptoms, to stay home and just fill out the app saying there's a possibility I've been exposed to it, and then we have to follow the Polk County Health Department guidelines, which is going to be quarantined for about 14 days, and then depending on how when the symptoms come up and everything else. All right, and we talked about the questionnaire already. So communication is really important, especially with the hybrid, with the kids not being at school every single day. So if you do have a medical need that comes up, or if you have any concerns about your students or your athletes, please let us know. Contact coach. I'll give my information out as well. Contact me directly, and we'll do our best to get you the help that is needed to get back into athletics. If you do have if you are seeing a physician or if you've seen a medical provider and you do have a doctor's note, please bring that or email or scan that to the coaching staff or to myself, so we can follow all the guidelines from the doctor. And I'll kind of talk about a little bit more about the training room rules and concussion awareness. Feel free to contact me. There's my contact information on down the bottom there, and I'll share that information again later. If somebody does get hurt during practice, and if it's something more minor in nature, I will try to contact you within the next 24 to 48 hours if I see that athlete. If it is something more more of an emergency situation, I'll contact you directly as soon as it happens to get that taken care of. If they have to go to urgent care, or if they need to go to emergency room, or something like that. Okay. Special needs, if they have inhalers, or if they have diabetes or anything pre-existing conditions, please make sure they are well versed in how to use that themselves, and they can make sure they have that with them at practices. Every single practice, it needs to be with them, and every single activity that they go on, it needs to be with them. And please let us know if they have any pre-existing conditions. Like I mentioned, if they do see a physician or a doctor, please make sure they bring the physician release or the note with them, so we know what their restrictions are, if they have any, or if they have other guidelines that we need to follow as they're getting back into participation. Nutrition, it's really important to have a well-rounded meal before games and practices. Make sure that they're not just eating that junk all the time. Make sure that hydrating. Drink lots and lots of fluids. A good rule of thumb to go by for hydration is you want to take your body mass, your weight, and divide that in half, and that's how many ounces of water you would need to sustain a well hydration balance. Try to provide healthy snacks as best you can. Refuel before games and after games. They're not allowed to share any snacks between players. They're not allowed to, coaches can't hand out any food or anything else like that. Make sure everything is packaged when they come. For concussions, biggest things biggest thing we can do to help minimize the risk of a concussion is to reduce exposures and also try to identify if there is a head injury. Not all head injuries are going to be diagnosed as concussions, and so sometimes the symptoms don't show up right away either. So if they have repeated hits throughout the day at practice or something, and the next day they start feeling ill, or they start feeling confused or having headaches and stuff like that, please contact us so we can get them screened to make sure it is not a concussion. But not every single head injury that you see is going to be diagnosed as concussion, and we do have a protocol set up at the schools to get them back into the participation into whatever sport they're in. The coaching staff do a great job, especially with football, which is a high impact sport, of reducing exposures. So that's going to be reduced reps, not having so many collisions during practices and having quick whistles and that kind of stuff. The coaching staff do a great job of that stuff. Here are some common signs and symptoms of concussions. Some of the severities are going to be changing. So if there are different levels of concussion, so if you have any nausea or vomiting, or if you have unequal pupil responses, or if you lose consciousness, that's going to be more of an emergency situation where they'll be sent to the doctor, to the emergency room right away. A lot of times for concussions, we just have them follow up with their family provider, family doctor, and then we'll take them through the protocol here at the schools. If you suspect a concussion, if you suspect that something might have happened, or if you want to get them screened, we take them out of practice right away if we suspect something unusual. Don't leave the players alone. They will not return on the same day that you suspect a concussion, and then we'll go through the testing after that. Now, the return to play is the protocol that we use after return to learn has been completed. So return to learn this year with a hybrid, we're going to have them be at full participation with no accommodations at all, with no medications to help with symptoms. And then we take them through the return to play, which is going to be different stages of physical activity to make sure that nothing flares up as they're returning to practice. And the steps are pointed out right there. But if we go through that process, I will be in contact with you and then talk to you about how that's going to work. So medical requirements, emergencies can happen. I've seen concussions in just about every single sport. I've I've seen some emergencies where we have to use an ambulance service, and sometimes it's something that you can transport yourself. And so be prepared for the worst and hope for the best is usually our guidelines for event coverages. So we always try to be as careful as possible when we're doing things. And please make sure that all your medical releases and all your updated physicals are in the app. So that is the information that we use. That the EMS will actually request that information as well to get them transported to the hospital. So injuries can happen. Some of it is going to be more severe. Some of it's going to be general soreness. And so I try to educate the kids as much as possible. So if they have something that's going on, please let us know, and we'll try to take care of it as best we can here at the school. We do injury screens as well. Right now in the training room, we're not allowed to have that many athletes in there at one time. So we're going to have one athlete in the training room at a time. I'm still going to be here at Northview every single Wednesday morning once school is in session, from 8:30 to about 9:15 in the morning. And then I'll try to touch base at Northview as much as possible throughout the school years as well. But with the schools in session, with the football programs and everything else, sometimes it's just easier just to contact me directly by my cell phone number, and then I can set up a time to meet with you. Sometimes it'll be at the school, and sometimes it'll be at the clinic, and it's just an injury screen to see how severe the injury is and to see what can be done to help that person get back into athletics. And I will be at all home football games and all cross-country meets that are home this year as well. There is my information. The easiest way to get a hold of me is going to be directly by my cell phone or sending me an email. If you can't get a hold of me, please reach out to a coach, and then the coach can reach out to me, and I'll try to get in touch with you. If you have any questions, please let us know. And I'm going to turn you back over to Holly now, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate all that information. You know, like I opened with, we're just so excited as summer started and we were able to see kids playing softball and baseball, and the winning edge. Just every day I feel like there's more normal, or it looks more normal. And for our kids, I'm so happy for that. It's just going to take a lot of coordination, a lot of collaboration, a lot of teamwork between families, the schools, and everything to try to get back on track and do the best that we can for our students and keeping everyone safe and healthy. So thank you in advance for your support, and go Jaguars.